Consumed by loss and emptiness, he no longer saw his own son by his side, until the boy falls into the pool, and a girl invisible to society dives in to save him. She saves the boy but awakens something even deeper in the man who had given up on feeling. The autumn sun cast golden rays through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Maxwell Harrison's penthouse in downtown Boston, but the warmth never seemed to reach the man sitting motionless at his desk. The 42-year-old tech magnate, founder and CEO of Harrison Innovations, stared at the quarterly reports on his screen without truly seeing them. His coffee had grown cold hours ago, much like the atmosphere in the sprawling apartment that should have felt like home. 16 months had passed since Sarah's sudden departure from his life. 16 months of emptiness. The doctors had called it an undetected congenital heart condition, a silent killer that had taken his wife in her sleep. Max had gone to bed with a complete life and woken up to shattered remnants he couldn't seem to piece back together. "Mr. Harrison?" Mrs. Jenkins's voice broke through his haze. The silver-haired housekeeper stood at the threshold of his home office, her face etched with the same concern it had worn for over a year. "It's almost 7. Ethan is waiting for dinner." Max blinked, only now realizing darkness had begun to fall outside. "Tell him I'll join shortly. Just need to finish these reports." "You said that yesterday," Mrs. Jenkins replied softly. At 62, with nearly a decade of service to the Harrison family, she had earned the right to speak candidly. And the day before, Max felt the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on his chest. Ethan, his 8-year-old son, the living reminder of Sarah with her same hazel eyes and gentle smile, the child he could barely look at without feeling the hollow ache of his loss. "Fine," he conceded, closing his laptop. "I'm coming." The dining room, like everything else in the penthouse, was a testament to Sarah's impeccable taste. Warm woods contrasting with sleek, modern lines, fresh flowers in crystal vases that Mrs. Jenkins diligently replaced each week. Ethan sat at the far end of the table that could seat 12, looking impossibly small. His legs swung nervously, not quite reaching the floor. "Hey, buddy," Max managed, settling into his chair. "Hi, Dad." Ethan's voice was quiet, uncertain. He pushed his broccoli around the plate with his fork. Mrs. Jenkins placed a perfectly cooked steak in front of Max before discreetly withdrawing to the kitchen, leaving father and son in a silence broken only by the clink of silverware against fine china. "How was school today?" Max asked, the question mechanical, part of the script they'd fallen into. "It was okay. We learned about ecosystems in science." "That's good." More silence. "Ms. Parker said my drawing was really good," Ethan ventured, a tentative hope in his voice. "She asked if she could keep it for the parent showcase next month." Max nodded absently, his mind already drifting back to the merger proposal that had come in that afternoon. "That's nice, Ethan." The boy's shoulders slumped slightly, the light in his eyes dimming. "It was of the Charles River with all the boats and birds and stuff." He paused. "Mom used to take me there." The mention of Sarah sent a jolt through Max's system. He set down his fork with more force than intended, the clatter making Ethan flinch. "I've got a conference call with Tokyo at 8, Max said, already standing. "Make sure you finish your vegetables." Ethan nodded, eyes downcast. "Yes, sir." Later that night, after his call had ended and the penthouse had grown quiet, Max found himself drawn to the door of his son's bedroom. It stood slightly ajar, a sliver of nightlight spilling into the hallway. He pushed it open gently. Ethan lay curled on his side, his Batman comforter twisted around his small body. On the nightstand sat a framed photo of Sarah, her smile radiant as she held a toddler Ethan at the beach. Beside it was a stack of drawings, landscapes, superheroes, and again, a small stick figure standing alone beside larger stick figures, separated by deliberate space. Max's throat tightened. He moved to the bedside and carefully straightened the comforter. Ethan stirred but didn't wake. "I'm sorry," Max whispered, words he couldn't seem to say when his son was awake to hear them. The next morning brought a flurry of meetings at Harrison Innovations' downtown headquarters. The company, which developed cutting-edge educational technology platforms, had grown exponentially under Max's leadership. Even in his emotional absence, his business instincts remained razor-sharp. "The Solaris Group is making noise about a majority acquisition," reported Karen Chen, his chief financial officer, during their executive briefing. "The initial figures are substantial. They want to gut our EdReach division," countered Michael Downs, head of development. "The program Sarah started for underserved communities isn't profitable enough for their portfolio." At the mention of his late wife's passion project, Max's jaw tightened. Sarah had been determined to bridge the digital divide in education, creating affordable technology solutions for schools in low-income areas. The division operated nearly at cost, a fact that had increasingly become a point of contention with the board. The EdReach division isn't on the table, Max stated flatly. Next item. The meeting continued, but Max found his mind drifting to Sarah's office, preserved exactly as she'd left it on the executive floor. She'd been the heart of Harrison Innovations, the visionary behind their social impact initiatives. He was merely the architect, the engineer who made her dreams technically feasible. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from Mrs. Jenkins. Unusual, as she rarely disturbed him during work hours. He excused himself to take it. "Mr. Harrison?" she began without preamble, her voice tight with concern. "I've just had Ethan's teacher on the phone. He had a breakdown during class today. He's in the counselor's office." Max felt his stomach drop. What happened? They were discussing family structures in social studies. When asked to describe his family, Ethan couldn't speak. He just shut down. Max closed his eyes, leaning against the wall of the hallway. Is he okay now? Physically, yes. But Maxwell, Mrs. Jenkins rarely used his first name. This is the third incident this semester. The school counselor is suggesting professional help. And frankly, so am I. The weight of his failure as a father crashed over Max anew. He had provided Ethan with every material comfort, the best schools, endless toys, a life of privilege, but had withheld the one thing the boy truly needed, his presence. "I'll pick him up myself," Max said, already heading toward the elevator. "There's something else," Mrs. Jenkins added, her tone softening. Before he stopped speaking, Ethan told his class that his biggest wish was for you to take him to Aquaventure Park, like you and his mother promised before she left. Max felt the words like a physical blow. The family trip they'd planned for Sarah's birthday, tickets purchased but never used. Ethan had been looking forward to it for weeks, especially the new wave pool with its artificial beach. After Sarah was gone, Max had cancelled everything, unable to bear the thought of family outings without her. "Tell the school I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed early, emotionally exhausted, Max found himself staring at the Aquaventure Park website on his tablet. The colorful images of families laughing together, of children splashing in crystal blue waters, seemed to mock his grief-stricken isolation. Mrs. Jenkins appeared with a cup of tea, setting it beside him. "It would mean the world to him," she said gently. "I have the Beijing presentation on Saturday," Max responded automatically. Mrs. Jenkins straightened, something hardening in her normally gentle eyes. "Mr. Harrison, I've served this family faithfully since Ethan was born. I loved Sarah like a daughter, and I've respected your grief. But that little boy is disappearing before our eyes, and with all due respect, sir, you're letting it happen." The bluntness of her words left Max speechless. "Sarah would be heartbroken," Mrs. Jenkins continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Not because you're grieving her, but because you're using that grief to hide from your son." Max felt anger flare briefly, then fade into hollow recognition of the truth. He glanced at the family portrait on the mantel, Sarah radiant in white, himself smiling genuinely, 3-year-old Ethan balanced on his shoulders, a family that no longer existed. "I don't know how to be what he needs," Max admitted, the words scraping his throat. "Every time I look at him, I see her. I see everything I couldn't protect." Mrs. Jenkins's expression softened. "You don't need to be perfect, Mr. Harrison. You just need to be present." Max looked back at the tablet at the brightly colored Aquaventure logo. With a decisive tap, he purchased 2 tickets for Saturday. "Cancel my Beijing call," he said quietly, "and ask Ethan what his favorite swimming trunks are. We'll need to find them." For the first time in 16 months, something that felt almost like hope flickered in the empty spaces of the penthouse. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, unusually warm for October in Boston. Ethan was up at dawn, his excitement palpable as he triple-checked his backpack. Swim trunks, towel, goggles, sunscreen, all meticulously arranged. Max found him sitting on the edge of his bed, already dressed in his favorite Red Sox t-shirt, tiny legs swinging anxiously. "You're up early," Max said, leaning against the doorframe. Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes wide with uncertainty. "Are we still going for real?" The question pierced Max's heart. How many promises had he broken over the past year? How many times had work calls and meetings taken precedence over moments with his son? "For real," Max confirmed, managing a smile. "The park opens at 10. We'll beat the crowds if we leave by 9. The smile that bloomed across Ethan's face was like sunrise after endless night. "Can we try the tsunami slide, and the lazy river, and the wave pool?" "All of it," Max promised. "Today is your day, buddy." Mrs. Jenkins appeared behind Max, her eyes twinkling. "Breakfast is ready, young man. You'll need your strength for all that swimming." Ethan bolted past them toward the kitchen, his small feet thundering with excitement that seemed too big for his body. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins said quietly to Max. "This means everything to him." Max nodded, a knot forming in his throat. When had his son's happiness become such a foreign concept? The drive to Aquaventure Park took them out of Boston's urban landscape and into the greener suburbs. Max had opted to drive himself rather than use his usual car service, another small step toward normalcy. Ethan chattered the entire way, pointing out landmarks and reciting facts about marine life he'd learned in school. Max found himself listening, really listening, for the first time in months. Aquaventure Park was a sprawling complex of pools, slides, and water attractions designed to mimic a tropical paradise. Despite the autumn date, the park was busy with families taking advantage of the unseasonable warmth and the climate-controlled indoor sections. "Wow," Ethan breathed as they passed through the entrance, his eyes wide at the sight of the massive wave pool centerpiece, complete with an artificial beach and palm trees. For a brief moment, Max felt a stab of grief. Sarah should be here, her hand in his, her laugh mingling with Ethan's excitement. He pushed the thought away, forcing himself to stay present. "Where to first?" he asked. Ethan pointed to the lazy river, a meandering waterway that circled the park. "Can we start there? Mom always said start slow and build up to the big stuff." Max swallowed hard. "Your mom was smart that way." They changed in the locker room, and Max was struck by how small Ethan looked in his blue, shark-patterned swim trunks. Had he always been this thin, this fragile-looking? The boy's ribs were visible when he raised his arms, and his shoulder blades jutted like tiny wings. Mrs. Jenkins had mentioned something about Ethan skipping meals, but Max hadn't fully registered the physical impact of his son's emotional struggle. The lazy river was a hit, Ethan laughing as they floated in their tubes, letting the gentle current carry them past waterfalls and through tunnels. Max found himself relaxing slightly, the perpetual tension in his shoulders easing. They moved on to progressively more adventurous attractions, and Max was surprised to discover genuine enjoyment in Ethan's delight. By noon, they were sitting at a poolside table, sharing nachos and frozen lemonades. Ethan's hair had dried in wild spikes, his cheeks flushed with excitement and sun. "This is the best day ever," he declared, cheese sauce clinging to his chin. Max reached over to wipe it away with a napkin. "We should do this more often," he found himself saying. Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really? Like, could we come back for my birthday in December?" "It might be too cold then, but we could find something else fun," Max said. "Maybe the aquarium or a Celtics game." "Or both," Ethan suggested hopefully. Max chuckled, a rusty sound he barely recognized as his own. "Maybe both." The moment was interrupted by the buzz of Max's phone. The caller ID showed Karen Chen, his CFO, the Solaris Group deal. He'd told her to only contact him for urgent developments. "I need to take this," he said to Ethan, already rising from the table. "Just 5 minutes, okay? Stay right here and finish your lunch." Ethan's smile dimmed but didn't disappear entirely. "Okay, Dad." Max stepped away to a quieter area near the restrooms. "Karen, what's happened?" "Solaris is pushing for an answer by Monday," she said without preamble. "They're sweetening the deal. They'll let us keep EdReach operational for 1 year before review." "1 year is nothing," Max replied, frustration edging into his voice. Sarah's vision was for a long-term commitment to those communities. "It's $8 billion, Max," Karen countered. "The board is unanimously in favor. They've called an emergency session for tomorrow." Max pinched the bridge of his nose. "I can't talk about this now. I'm with Ethan." "That's why I called," Karen said, her voice softening slightly. "I knew you'd want time to prepare before walking into that boardroom. They're going to try to steamroll you on this." "Let them try," Max said grimly. "Set up a video conference for tonight, 9 o'clock. I'll review the proposal then." He ended the call, already mentally cataloging the potential strategies to maintain control of Sarah's legacy. The weight of responsibility settled back onto his shoulders as he walked back toward their table. Except Ethan wasn't there. Max scanned the area, expecting to see his son nearby, perhaps at the condiment station or talking to another child. But the table was empty, save for their half-eaten food. "Ethan," he called, moving toward the main pool area. Dozens of children splashed and played, none of them his son. A spike of adrenaline shot through Max's system. "Ethan!" A lifeguard noticed his distress. "Sir, is everything okay?" "My son, he's 8, dark hair, blue shark swim trunks. He was just at that table." The lifeguard's expression shifted to alert concern. "Let me call it in. When did you last see him?" 5 minutes ago. Maybe 7. Max's heart hammered against his ribs. "I just took a phone call. He was supposed to wait." The lifeguard spoke rapidly into his radio, while Max continued to scan the crowds, panic building. Then he spotted a small gathering of people at the edge of the wave pool, their postures suggesting alarm. His blood turned to ice. Max sprinted across the deck, slipping once on the wet surface before regaining his footing. As he approached, he could see a small form on the concrete, lying still while a park employee knelt beside him. "Ethan!" Max's shout cut through the murmurs of the onlookers. He pushed through the circle of strangers to find his son unconscious, water pooling beneath his small body. What happened? "Someone help him." The park employee, a young man barely out of his teens, looked up with fear in his eyes. I just pulled him out. He wasn't moving." "Has anyone called an ambulance?" Max demanded, falling to his knees beside Ethan's motionless form. His son's lips had a bluish tinge that triggered primal terror in Max's core. "On their way," someone in the crowd confirmed. Max reached for Ethan's wrist, searching desperately for a pulse. His hands were shaking too badly to find it. "Come on, buddy," he pleaded. "Please, Ethan." The circle of onlookers had grown, faces blending into a blur of useless sympathy. Why wasn't anyone doing anything? Where were the medical staff? Max felt paralyzed, his vast wealth and power suddenly meaningless in the face of this moment. "Move!" a young voice commanded, startlingly authoritative. The crowd parted, revealing a girl no older than 10 or 11. She was small-framed and barefoot, wearing a faded t-shirt over a modest one-piece swimsuit that had seen better days. Her dark hair hung in wet tangles around a determined face as she dropped to her knees beside Ethan. Without hesitation, she tilted Ethan's head back, checked his airway, and began chest compressions with a precision that seemed impossible for her age. "He hit his head on the edge when he jumped," she explained, her focus never wavering from her task. "I saw it happen." Max watched in stunned silence as this child, this girl who looked like she could barely afford the park's entrance fee, worked to save his son with the confidence of a trained paramedic. After 30 compressions, she pinched Ethan's nose, sealed her mouth over his, and gave 2 rescue breaths. Then back to compressions. The crowd had gone silent, the only sound the rhythmic count the girl kept under her breath. "Come on," she murmured to Ethan. "Breathe for me." As if commanded by some higher power, Ethan suddenly convulsed, water spewing from his mouth as he coughed violently. The girl quickly turned him onto his side, supporting his head as he expelled the pool water from his lungs. "That's it," she encouraged softly. "Get it all out." Ethan's eyes fluttered open, confused and frightened. "Dad?" Max gathered his son into his arms, tears streaming unchecked down his face. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. You're okay." The girl sat back on her heels, her expression shifting from intense focus to shy uncertainty as park medical staff finally arrived, followed shortly by EMTs with a stretcher. In the chaos that followed, the medical assessment, the decision to transport Ethan to the hospital for observation, the paperwork and questions, Max turned to thank the extraordinary child who had saved his son's life. But she was gone, vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving behind only wet footprints that quickly evaporated in the hot sun. No one in the crowd seemed to know who she was or where she had gone. It was as if Ethan's guardian angel had materialized from thin air and then dissolved back into the ether. As the EMTs loaded Ethan into the ambulance, the boy clutched his father's hand. "Dad? That girl? She knew what to do." "She wasn't scared." "No, she wasn't," Max agreed, his mind racing with questions about the mysterious child. "I want to thank her," Ethan said weakly. "She saved me." Max nodded, a strange certainty taking root in his heart. "We'll find her," he promised, and for the second time that day, he made a vow to his son that he intended to keep. "Wherever she is, we'll find her." The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor and Ethan's soft breathing. He had fallen asleep shortly after the doctors confirmed he was suffering only mild concussion symptoms and would make a full recovery. Max sat in the vinyl chair beside the bed, his laptop open but untouched, the emergency board meeting forgotten. All he could see was his son's lifeless body on the concrete, blue-tinged lips, and the strange, determined girl who had appeared from nowhere to save him. In that moment, Max had faced the unthinkable, losing Ethan just as he had lost Sarah, the universe giving and taking with cruel indifference. But the universe had also sent an unlikely guardian angel, and Max couldn't shake the image of her. Thin arms performing precise chest compressions, calm voice counting steadily, worn swimsuit suggesting a life far removed from the privilege Ethan had always known. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Mrs. Jenkins entered, her face lined with worry. She'd driven separately to the hospital after Max's frantic call. "How is he?" she whispered, moving to the bedside and gently adjusting Ethan's blanket. "Stable. They want to keep him overnight for observation." Max ran a hand over his face, the day's events catching up to him. "I almost lost him, Margaret." Mrs. Jenkins placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "But you didn't. That's what matters now. Because of that girl." Max looked up at his housekeeper. "She saved him when I couldn't, when I wasn't even watching him." The self-recrimination in his voice was unmistakable. Mrs. Jenkins sighed and took the seat across from him. "What happened exactly?" "The nurse didn't give me many details." Max recounted the events, the business call, Ethan wandering off to the wave pool, the apparent accident where he'd hit his head while trying to impress other children with a jump. "By the time I found him, he'd already been pulled from the water. He wasn't breathing, Margaret." His voice broke. "And then this girl appeared, 10, maybe 11 years old. She performed CPR like a trained paramedic. Perfect technique. She brought him back and then she just disappeared." Mrs. Jenkins' eyebrows rose. "A child performed CPR?" "Perfectly," Max emphasized. "And then she vanished before I could even thank her. No one knew who she was or where she went." He opened his laptop and pulled up the security footage he'd convinced the park management to share with him. The video showed exactly what he'd described: Ethan's accident, the panic, and then the small figure pushing through the crowd to take control of the situation with astonishing confidence. "I need to find her," Max said, determination hardening his voice. "I need to thank her properly, to repay her somehow." Mrs. Jenkins studied the grainy image on the screen. "You might need professional help for that. The park is huge, and she could be anyone, from anywhere." Max was already reaching for his phone. "I know exactly who to call." Frank Winters answered on the third ring, his gruff voice immediately bringing Max back to a darker time, the weeks after Sarah's passing, when he'd irrationally demanded investigations into her medical care, looking for someone to blame. "Harrison, been a while." "I need your help, Frank," Max said without preamble. "A different kind of case this time." "I'm listening." 20 minutes later, after explaining the situation and emailing the security footage, Max had retained the former police detective turned private investigator to find the mysterious girl. Frank's only comment after viewing the video was a low whistle of admiration. "Kid's got skills, that's for sure. Not something you pick up from TV shows." "That's what I thought," Max agreed. "She had training." "I'll start with the park admission records for today, cross-reference with the footage timestamp. See if we can get an ID from ticket purchases." "Whatever it costs," Max said. "And Frank, make this your priority." After ending the call, Max turned back to find Mrs. Jenkins watching him with an unreadable expression. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she replied, a hint of approval softening her features. "It's just good to see you, invested in something again." Max looked at his sleeping son, chest rising and falling in reassuring rhythm. "It shouldn't have taken this to wake me up." "Better late than never," Mrs. Jenkins said gently. "Sarah would say the same." The mention of his late wife no longer triggered the immediate shuddering of emotion it once had. Perhaps nearly losing Ethan had shifted something fundamental inside him, or perhaps 16 months was simply long enough for grief to begin its slow transformation into something less raw, less paralyzing. The board meeting, Max suddenly remembered, checking his watch. It was already past 9. "I took the liberty of calling Ms. Chen," Mrs. Jenkins informed him. "I told her about Ethan's accident and that you wouldn't be available until tomorrow at the earliest." Max felt a rush of gratitude for the woman who had held his household together while he'd been lost in his own pain. "Thank you," she nodded, rising from her chair. I'll bring you some decent coffee and a change of clothes for the morning. You should get some rest too." After she left, Max moved his chair closer to Ethan's bed and, after a moment's hesitation, took his son's small hand in his own. The boy's fingers curled instinctively around his, and something in Max's chest loosened. A knot of tension he'd carried for so long, he'd forgotten it wasn't a natural part of his anatomy. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered. "I'm so sorry for checking out on you. That ends now." 3 days later, Max sat in his home office reviewing the information Frank had assembled. Ethan was back home recovering quickly and already asking when they could return to the water park, a question that made Max simultaneously proud of his son's resilience and nauseated at the thought of reliving that terror. "So what have we got?" Max asked the investigator, who sat across from him sipping coffee from one of Sarah's handmade pottery mugs, a detail that would have bothered Max weeks ago, but now felt strangely right. Frank laid out several photos and documents on the desk. "Her name is Lily Rodriguez, age 10, lives in Roxbury with her mother Elena Rodriguez, a single parent who works multiple jobs. No father in the picture, at least not officially." Max studied the school photo Frank had obtained, a thin-faced girl with serious dark eyes and the hint of a smile that suggested she was holding something back from the camera. It was undoubtedly the same child from the water park. "How did she learn CPR? That wasn't amateur hour." Frank nodded appreciatively. That was the interesting part. Her grandmother was a nurse practitioner in Puerto Rico before moving to Boston, taught all her grandkids basic medical procedures, apparently believed everyone should know how to save a life. The grandmother passed away last year, but the training stuck. Max absorbed this information, feeling a strange connection to this girl who had also experienced loss. And they were at Aquaventure Park because community program, Frank explained. Local church group sponsors underprivileged kids for recreational activities once a month. Lily was part of the group, but she apparently wandered off from her assigned buddy. "Lucky for your son that she did." "Very lucky," Max agreed quietly. He tapped the address listed on the school records. "This is where they live?" Frank's expression grew somber. "Yeah, and that's where things get complicated. The mother, Eleanor, she's not well, working 3 jobs, convenience store mornings, hospital cafeteria evenings, office cleaning on weekends. Neighbors say she's been coughing for months, lost a lot of weight, can't afford to stop working or see a doctor." The implications were clear. "And Lily?" "Taking care of herself mostly, making her own meals, getting herself to school. Teachers report she's bright, exceptionally so, but often tired, sometimes comes to school in unwashed clothes. They've made reports to social services, but with the mother technically providing and no evidence of abuse, it's low priority in an overloaded system." Max stared at the photograph of the apartment building, a rundown brick structure with bars on the lower windows and graffiti on the adjacent wall. The contrast with Ethan's privileged upbringing couldn't be more stark. "She saved my son's life," Max said, his voice tight with emotion. "And she's living like this?" Frank shrugged, the gesture conveying years of witnessing social inequities. "Life isn't fair, Harrison. You know that better than most." Indeed, he did. Sarah's passing had taught him that cruel lesson. But something else stirred in Max now. Not just gratitude or a sense of obligation, but a connection to this child and her struggling mother that he couldn't quite define. "I want to meet them," he decided. "Not just to thank them, but to help. Properly." Frank raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? These situations can get messy. People get suspicious when wealthy folks suddenly take an interest in their lives." "I'm sure," Max said firmly. "Set it up. And Frank, be diplomatic. I don't want to frighten them or make them feel like charity cases." After the investigator left, Max found himself drawn to Sarah's office. He hadn't changed a thing since her passing. Her academic journals still stacked neatly on the desk, her favorite throw blanket still draped over the reading chair, her vision board for Ed Reach still pinned to the wall. He stood before that board now, studying the photos, quotes, and statistics she'd assembled to illustrate the educational disparities in Boston's neighborhoods. There in the center was a map with Roxbury prominently highlighted, one of the areas Sarah had designated for priority intervention with their educational technology programs. The very neighborhood where Lily Rodriguez was growing up, likely attending one of the underfunded schools Sarah had been determined to support. The coincidence felt too significant to ignore. Max pulled out his phone and called Karen Chen. "Max, are you coming in tomorrow? The board is getting restless about Solaris. I'll be in, he assured her. But first I need you to pull all the data we have on the EdReach initiatives in Roxbury. Everything, school partnerships, technology deployments, metrics, all of it. Karen's surprise was evident in her brief pause. You haven't looked at the EdReach data in over a year. I know, Max acknowledged. That was a mistake. One of many I intend to correct. After ending the call, Max stood at the window overlooking Boston's skyline, the city lights blurring as his mind raced with possibilities. For the first time since Sarah's passing, he felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival, beyond the mechanical process of running his company and going through the motions of parenting. Mr. Harrison? Mrs. Jenkins appeared at the door. Ethan is asking for you. He wants to know if you'll read to him tonight. Max turned, something lighter in his step as he moved toward the door. Tell him I'll be right there. And Margaret, could you clear my Saturday? I'd like to take Ethan to the Children's Museum. Mrs. Jenkins smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. I'll arrange it. As Max headed toward his son's room, Sarah's favorite quote, framed on her office wall, seemed to follow him down the hallway. We rise by lifting others. Perhaps in seeking to thank the girl who had saved his son, Max would find a way to save himself as well. The Roxbury apartment building looked even more dilapidated in person than it had in Frank's photographs. Paint peeled from the exterior walls like skin after a sunburn, and the front steps sagged precariously. Max parked his Tesla, conspicuously out of place on this street, and checked the address again, though he knew it was correct. Are you sure about this? Frank asked from the passenger seat. The investigator had insisted on accompanying Max for this first meeting, concerned about the potential reactions from neighbors in an area where a man in a designer suit might be viewed with suspicion. Completely sure, Max replied, retrieving a gift basket from the back seat. The arrangement of fruit, gourmet snacks, and a small envelope containing a thank you card and a gift certificate seemed simultaneously inadequate and ostentatious now that he was here. The third-floor hallway smelled of cabbage and disinfectant. Apartment 3C had a worn welcome mat and a small pot with a struggling plant beside the door. Max took a deep breath and knocked. After a moment, the door opened to reveal a thin woman in her mid-30s, with the same serious dark eyes as her daughter. Elena Rodriguez looked exhausted, with pronounced shadows beneath her eyes and hollow cheeks that spoke of more than simple fatigue. Despite this, she carried herself with unmistakable dignity. Yes? She asked cautiously, her accent subtle but present. Ms. Rodriguez? My name is Maxwell Harrison. This is Frank Winters. Max felt uncharacteristically nervous. I believe your daughter, Lily, was at Aquaventure Park last Saturday. Recognition dawned in Elena's eyes, followed immediately by wariness. What is this about? From behind her mother appeared Lily, the girl from the water park. She was even smaller than Max remembered, drowning in an oversized Boston College sweatshirt. Her eyes widened as she recognized Max. You're Ethan's dad, she said simply. Max nodded, a lump forming in his throat. I am, and you saved his life. Elena looked between them in confusion. Lily? What is he talking about? Before Lily could answer, a violent coughing fit overtook her mother. Elena doubled over, the spasms racking her thin frame as she braced herself against the doorframe. The cough was deep and wet, the kind that suggested something seriously wrong in the lungs. Mom! Lily moved quickly to support her mother, guiding her to a threadbare couch visible through the doorway. The ease with which she handled the situation suggested it was a regular occurrence. I'm okay, Eleanor managed between coughs, pressing a tissue to her mouth. When she pulled it away, Max caught a glimpse of something that looked alarmingly like blood. May we come in? Max asked, concern overriding protocol. I think you should sit down. Eleanor nodded weakly, too exhausted to protest. The apartment was small but meticulously clean, with mismatched furniture that had been carefully maintained. School certificates and drawings, clearly Lily's work, were proudly displayed on the refrigerator. A small table by the window held several science textbooks well beyond elementary level. Water? Lily asked her mother, already moving toward the kitchen with practiced efficiency. Please, Eleanor whispered, her breathing labored. While Lily filled a glass, Max set the gift basket on the coffee table and sat across from Eleanor. Ms. Rodriguez, I came here to thank your daughter. My son Ethan almost drowned at the water park last weekend. Lily performed CPR and saved his life. Elena's eyes widened as she looked at her daughter returning with the water. Is this true, Lily? Lily shrugged, a hint of color touching her cheeks. The boy hit his head and wasn't breathing. I did what Abuela taught us. My God, Elena whispered, reaching for her daughter's hand. Why didn't you tell me? You were working double shifts, Lily said simply. You were tired. It wasn't a big deal. The matter-of-fact way she dismissed her heroic act made Max's chest tighten. How many other not-a-big-deal moments had this child faced alone? It was a very big deal to me, Max said gently. Ethan is all I have. I can never repay what your daughter did, but I wanted to meet you both and express my gratitude in person. Eleanor nodded, a small smile softening her features despite her obvious discomfort. Lily has a gift. My mother, she was a nurse for 40 years, always said Lily had healer's hands. Another coughing fit interrupted her, this one more prolonged and concerning. Lily moved automatically to rub her mother's back, her young face composed but her eyes betraying fear. Ms. Rodriguez, Max said when the coughing subsided, how long have you had that cough? Elena waved a dismissive hand. It's nothing, just a cold that won't go away. It's been 3 months, Lily corrected, her voice quiet but firm. And it's getting worse. Frank, who had been observing silently from near the door, caught Max's eye with a meaningful look. This was more serious than they had realized. Have you seen a doctor? Max asked, already knowing the answer. Elena shook her head. I'm between insurance right now. When my hours were cut at the hospital cafeteria, I lost coverage. I'm picking up extra shifts at the convenience store until I qualify again. Mom coughs up blood sometimes, Lily added, ignoring her mother's look of embarrassment. And she's lost 12 pounds. I've been keeping track. Max made a decision then, one that would alter the course of multiple lives. Ms. Rodriguez, I'd like to help, not just with a thank you gift, but with proper medical care. My family has connections at Massachusetts General. I can arrange for you to see specialists immediately, at no cost to you. Eleanor straightened, pride flashing in her eyes. Mr. Harrison, I appreciate your gratitude toward my daughter, but we don't accept charity. It's not charity, Max countered gently. It's a debt. Your daughter saved my son's life. Allow me to help ensure she doesn't lose her mother. The bluntness of his statement hung in the air. Lily's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the suddenly still apartment. Besides, Max continued, I have a business proposition that might interest you as well. But first, your health needs to be addressed. Elena studied him for a long moment, then glanced at her daughter's worried face. Something in her expression softened. What kind of business proposition? She asked cautiously. My late wife started an educational initiative focused on bridging technological and opportunity gaps in underserved communities, Max explained. The program needs someone with real-world perspective and community connections to help guide its development. From what I've learned about you, you might be exactly the person we're looking for. It wasn't a lie. The EdReach division did need community liaisons, but Max was accelerating a hiring plan that had been dormant since Sarah's passing. Still, as the words left his mouth, they felt right, as if Sarah herself had guided him to this moment. Elena's skepticism was evident. And you determined this from a 15-minute conversation? Max smiled. I'm a good judge of character. It's how I built my company. But there's no pressure. First, let's get you healthy. Then we can discuss potential opportunities. After more discussion and Elena's reluctant agreement to a medical appointment the following day, Max and Frank prepared to leave. As Elena excused herself to use the bathroom, Lily walked them to the door. How's Ethan? She asked, her voice softer now that they were out of her mother's earshot. He's doing great, thanks to you, Max replied. He wants to meet you properly, to say thank you himself. Lily nodded, her expression serious beyond her years. My mom is really sick, isn't she? The directness of the question caught Max off guard. This was a child who had clearly learned to read between lines, to interpret adult euphemisms and evasions. Yes, he answered honestly. But we're going to get her the help she needs. Promise? Lily's voice cracked slightly, revealing the frightened child beneath the composed exterior. Promise, Max said firmly. He hesitated, then added, Lily, your mother mentioned you have an interest in science. The books on your table, they're pretty advanced. A flicker of enthusiasm lit the girl's eyes. I want to be a doctor like my abuela was supposed to be. She had to quit medical school when she got pregnant with my mom, but she taught me everything she knew. That explains the perfect CPR technique, Max mused. Well, if you'd like, I have some connections at the Boston Science Museum. They have programs for gifted students. We can't afford extra programs, Lily interrupted, matter of fact rather than self-pitying. What if cost wasn't an issue? Max pressed gently. Would you be interested? Lily's eyes narrowed slightly. Why are you doing all this? Just because I helped Ethan? The perceptiveness of the question impressed Max. Partly, he admitted. But also because sometimes people come into our lives at exactly the right moment, for reasons we don't immediately understand. I think you and your mother might be those people for my family. Lily considered this with a seriousness that made her seem much older than 10. My abuela used to say there are no coincidences, only connections we haven't recognized yet. Your abuela sounds like she was a wise woman, Max replied, smiling. She was, Lily agreed, a hint of grief coloring her words. Then, with the resilience of youth, she shifted topics. Does Ethan like science too? He loves it, Max said. Especially anything to do with marine biology or ecosystems. A small smile, the first genuine one Max had seen, curved Lily's lips. I could show him my book on coral reef conservation. It has really cool pictures. I think he'd like that very much. 2 days later, Elena Rodriguez sat stunned in a consultation room at Massachusetts General Hospital, Max beside her as doctor. Patel delivered the diagnosis. Pulmonary tuberculosis, the doctor said gravely. Quite advanced, I'm afraid. The good news is that it's treatable with a rigorous course of antibiotics, but you'll need to remain in isolation for the first 2 weeks of treatment to prevent transmission. Elena's face paled. 2 weeks, I can't. My job's, Lily. Your employers will be notified that this is a public health requirement, Dr. Patel explained gently. As for your daughter, arrangements will need to be made. Does she have another family member she can stay with? Elena shook her head slowly. My mother passed last year. It's just us. Max, who had been silently processing the information, leaned forward. Lily can stay with me and my son. We have plenty of room and she'll be well cared for while you recover. Elena turned to him, surprise and suspicion warring in her expression. Mr. Harrison, that's not necessary. Perhaps a temporary foster placement. Foster care? Max interrupted more sharply than he intended. Absolutely not. Lily saved my son's life. The least I can do is ensure she has a safe, comfortable place to stay while you get better. It's highly irregular, Elena protested weakly, though Max could see the relief beneath her concern. The thought of her daughter in the system clearly terrified her. I'll have my lawyers draw up a temporary guardianship agreement, Max assured her. Everything legal and transparent. And we can set up video calls every day so you can see she's okay. Dr. Patel watched this exchange with professional neutrality, though Max caught a hint of approval in the physician's eyes. The treatment will be aggressive, the doctor continued, returning to medical matters. The bacteria has developed some resistance, but we've caught it before catastrophic damage occurred. With proper care and rest, you should make a full recovery. And the cost? Eleanor asked, the worry lines around her eyes deepening. Already taken care of, Max said firmly. Non-negotiable. Later that evening, Max sat in his home office, finalizing the details of Elena's treatment plan and Lily's temporary stay. Mrs. Jenkins had already prepared the guest room adjacent to Ethan's, adding small touches to make it welcoming for a young girl. Dad? Ethan appeared in the doorway, pajama-clad and curious. Is it true? Is Lily really coming to stay with us? Max nodded, setting aside his laptop. For a few weeks while her mom gets better. Is that okay with you? Ethan's face lit up. It's awesome. I can show her my science collection and my telescope, and maybe she can help me with my ecosystem project. The enthusiasm in his son's voice warmed Max's heart. Since the water park incident, Ethan had spoken of little else besides the girl who had saved him. In his childish reasoning, Lily had attained near mythical status. She might be a little shy at first, Max cautioned. Her life is very different from yours, and this is a big change for her. Ethan nodded solemnly. I'll be really nice, Dad. I promise. And I won't show off about our stuff or anything. Max felt a surge of pride at his son's sensitivity. That's very thoughtful, buddy. Dad? Ethan's voice grew quieter. Is Lily's mom going to be okay? The question and the genuine concern behind it caught Max off guard. Yes, she will. She's sick, but the doctors are going to help her get better. Ethan nodded, processing this. Like how Mom was supposed to get better but couldn't? The innocent question pierced Max's heart. He beckoned Ethan closer, pulling him into a hug. Nobody. This is different. Lily's mom has an infection that medicine can cure. What happened to Mom it was something no one could fix. Ethan leaned into his father's embrace. I'm glad Lily's mom will be okay. Lily needs her. Yes, she does, Max agreed softly. Everyone needs someone to love them. As Ethan headed back to bed, Max found himself standing before the portrait of Sarah in the hallway. The photograph had been taken on their 10th anniversary trip to Santorini, her smile radiant, hair windblown, eyes crinkled with laughter. I think you'd approve of this, he told her quietly. Actually, I think this might have been your plan all along. For the first time since her passing, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like consent. Lily Rodriguez stood in the center of the guest bedroom, her small backpack clutched against her chest like a shield. The room was bigger than the entire living area of her apartment, with a queen-sized bed draped in soft blue linens, a desk by the window overlooking the Boston skyline, and a private bathroom gleaming with marble and chrome. Is it okay? Max asked, watching her reaction carefully. He'd instructed Mrs. Jenkins to remove some of the more opulent touches, concerned about overwhelming the girl. Lily nodded, her expression guarded. It's very nice, thank you. The dresser is empty, so you can unpack your things, Max continued, gesturing to the cherrywood furniture. And if you need anything at all, Mrs. Jenkins or I will be happy to help. Lily placed her backpack carefully on the bed, but made no move to open it. When can I talk to my mum? We've set up a video call for after dinner, Max assured her. The hospital has special tablets for isolation patients. You'll be able to see and talk to her every day. Some of the tension left Lily's shoulders at this news. She glanced around the room again, her gaze lingering on the bookshelf stocked with a selection of novels and science books Mrs. Jenkins had thoughtfully arranged. You can borrow any books you like, Max offered. And if there's something specific you'd like to read, we can get it for you. Before Lily could respond, the sound of running footsteps approached, and Ethan appeared at the doorway, slightly out of breath with excitement. Hi, he exclaimed, his smile wide and genuine. Remember me? I'm Ethan. Lily's composure cracked slightly, a small smile tugging at her lips. I remember. How's your head? Ethan touched the fading bruise at his temple. Almost all better. Dad says I have a thick skull, which is good because it protected my brain. Actually, your cerebrospinal fluid provides the primary cushioning for your brain, Lily corrected automatically, then looked embarrassed. Sorry. That's so cool, Ethan exclaimed, unperturbed by the correction. How do you know that? My grandmother taught me. She was a nurse. Can you teach me stuff too? Dad got me this awesome human body model for Christmas, but some of the pieces are confusing. Max watched the interaction with amazement. The awkwardness he'd anticipated seemed to evaporate as Ethan's enthusiasm drew Lily out of her shell. Dinner will be ready in 30 minutes, he informed them. Ethan, why don't you show Lily around before then? Yes. Ethan grabbed Lily's hand without hesitation. Come on, I want to show you my telescope and my fish tank. To Max's surprise, Lily allowed herself to be pulled along, her initial wariness giving way to cautious curiosity. As the children disappeared down the hallway, Mrs. Jenkins appeared at Max's side. That went better than expected, she observed. Max nodded, relief evident in his expression. Ethan's always been good with people. Gets that from his mother. And you, Mrs. Jenkins corrected gently, when you choose to be. The evening progressed more smoothly than Max had dared hope. Dinner, a simple pasta dish Mrs. Jenkins had prepared, was filled with Ethan's enthusiastic chatter about his school science project, occasionally punctuated by Lily's thoughtful questions or quiet corrections to his scientific facts. Afterward, Max set up the video call with Elena in her hospital isolation room. He gave Lily privacy for the conversation, but could hear her voice from the study, softer than usual, reassuring her mother that she was fine, that everyone was being nice, that she would do her homework, and not be any trouble. When the call ended, Lily emerged from the study with suspiciously bright eyes. Is your mom doing okay? Max asked gently. Lily nodded, blinking rapidly. She looks tired, but the doctor said the medicine is working. It takes time, Max said, but she's getting the best care possible. Lily studied him with those serious eyes that seemed to see more than a child should. Why are you doing all this? The truth, the directness of the question caught Max off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. This was a child who had grown up quickly out of necessity. The simple answer is gratitude, he replied honestly. You saved my son, but there's more to it than that. He hesitated, searching for words a 10-year-old might understand. Sometimes life takes people away from us when we're not ready to let them go. I lost my wife, Ethan's mother, and I didn't handle it well. I shut down. I wasn't there for Ethan the way he needed me to be. Lily's expression softened slightly. Like when my abuela passed away. Max nodded. When I saw you save Ethan, something changed. It felt like I was being given a second chance. Not just to be a better father, but to honor my wife's memory by helping others the way she always did. My mom says we should always help people if we can, Lily said simply. Even when we don't have much ourselves. Your mom sounds like a wise woman. She is, Lily agreed, a hint of pride in her voice. Then, with a child's ability to shift topics, Ethan said you have a laboratory in your company building. Is that true? Max smiled at the spark of interest in her eyes. We do. Several, actually. Would you like to see them sometime? Lily nodded, trying and failing to hide her enthusiasm. Yes, please. Then it's settled. Maybe this weekend if you're both caught up on schoolwork. The next morning brought the first challenge of their new arrangement. Max had arranged for Lily to continue attending her regular school in Roxbury, with his driver taking her there and picking her up. But as they prepared to leave, Lily grew increasingly quiet and withdrawn. Is something wrong? Max asked as she picked at her breakfast. Lily shook her head, but her hunched shoulders told a different story. Mrs. Jenkins, with her years of experience with children, recognized the issue immediately. Are you worried about what your classmates will think, dear? About staying in a fancy building and arriving in a nice car? Lily's head shot up, her eyes wide with surprise at being so easily understood. They already think I'm weird because I read medical books, she admitted quietly. If they see me getting out of a fancy car. Max mentally kicked himself for not considering this. Of course, a child her age would worry about fitting in, especially one who already stood out academically. What if Mr. Stevens drops you a block away? He suggested. Would that help? Lily considered this, then nodded. And maybe I could just use my regular backpack instead of the new one Mrs. Jenkins got me. Mrs. Jenkins looked like she might protest. The child's old backpack was held together with safety pins and hope. But Max caught her eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. Whatever makes you comfortable, he agreed. And Lily? It's okay to accept help without feeling bad about it. It doesn't change who you are. Lily didn't look entirely convinced, but some of the tension left her small frame. With the children off to their respective schools, Max headed to Harrison Innovations for his first full day back since Ethan's accident. The familiar rhythm of meetings and decisions should have felt comfortable, but he found himself distracted, checking his phone for updates from Mrs. Jenkins about Lily's day and messages from the hospital about Elena's condition. "For you seem different," Karen Chen remarked during their afternoon briefing. "More present." Max looked up from the quarterly projections they were reviewing. "Do I?" Karen nodded, studying him with the frank assessment that made her such a valuable CFO. "For over a year you've been going through the motions, making decisions, running the company, but not really here. Now suddenly you're asking about EdReach metrics, questioning our community impact assessments, looking beyond the bottom line again." She tilted her head. What changed? Max considered deflecting, but opted for honesty with one of his longest-serving executives. "I had a wake-up call. Several, actually." He explained briefly about Ethan's accident, Lily's intervention, and the subsequent discoveries about her family's situation. "So now this girl and her mother are what? Your personal charity project?" Karen asked, though her tone held curiosity rather than judgment. "No," Max replied firmly. "They're a reminder of what Sarah was trying to accomplish with EdReach, a reminder that success isn't measured by profit margins alone." Karen's expression softened. Sarah would be happy to hear that. "I think she orchestrated it, honestly," Max said with a small smile. "Seems like something she would do, send a pint-sized guardian angel to save not just Ethan but me as well." Karen laughed, a sound rarely heard in the executive suite these past 16 months. "Well, in that case, I should tell you that the board is still pushing for the Solaris deal. They're making their final presentation tomorrow." Max's smile faded. "They're still insisting on dismantling EdReach?" "Not immediately," Karen clarified, "but their 3-year plan phases it out in favor of their corporate training platform." She hesitated. "It's a good offer, Max. $8 billion is well above market value." "And how do we value Sarah's vision?" Max countered. How do we price the impact on communities like Roxbury if we abandon them? Karen sighed. I knew you'd say that. For what it's worth, I agree with you. But as CFO, I have to present all the financial realities. I appreciate that, Max said, and I'll hear them out tomorrow. But my position hasn't changed. That evening, Max returned home to find an unexpected scene in the penthouse kitchen. Mrs. Jenkins, Ethan, and Lily were gathered around the island, all wearing aprons and covered in various amounts of flour. A delicious smell permeated the air. What's going on here? Max asked, setting down his briefcase. We're making empanadas, Ethan announced proudly, holding up flour-coated hands. Lily's teaching us her abuela's recipe. Lily, looking more relaxed than Max had yet seen her, nodded. Mrs. Jenkins had all the ingredients. These are chicken and potato, like my mum makes when she's not too tired. Lily is very precise with measurements, Mrs. Jenkins added with approval. They're natural in the kitchen. Is that so? Max removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Room for one more? The surprise on all three faces made him realize how rarely he participated in such domestic scenes, another failing he intended to rectify. Under Lily's surprisingly authoritative instruction, Max found himself crimping dough edges and learning about the importance of the proper filling-to-pastry ratio. The simple activity, filled with Ethan's laughter and Lily's quiet but growing confidence, felt more rewarding than any business deal he'd closed in years. After dinner, the empanadas pronounced a success by all, Max helped the children with their homework at the dining table. Ethan struggled with his math worksheet, while Lily completed hers with swift efficiency before turning to her science reading. I don't get this one, Ethan sighed, staring at a word problem. The train leaves at 2 p.m. going 60 miles per hour and another train. It's about calculating when they'll meet, Lily interjected, leaning over to look at his paper. You need to set up an equation with time as your variable. Max watched as Lily patiently explained the concept, breaking it down into simpler terms until Ethan's face lit with understanding. Her teaching style was remarkably effective, clear, concise, and encouraging. You're really good at explaining things, Max observed when Ethan had successfully completed the problem. Lily shrugged, but he caught the pleased flush on her cheeks. I like helping, and math is easy once you see the patterns. What's your favorite subject in school? Max asked, genuinely curious. Science, she answered immediately. But they don't go deep enough. My teacher got annoyed when I asked about mitochondrial DNA last week. She said it wasn't in the 5th grade curriculum. Max raised an eyebrow. Mitochondrial DNA? That's high school biology, at least. Abuela had medical textbooks, Lily explained simply. I read them when Mom was working late. Max exchanged a glance with Mrs. Jenkins, who had entered with a tray of hot chocolate. The housekeeper gave a subtle nod, confirming what Max was thinking. This child was exceptional. Lily, would you be interested in taking some assessment tests? He asked carefully. Not for school, but to help understand where your academic strengths are. Wariness immediately returned to Lily's expression. Why? Because I think you might benefit from some additional educational resources, Max explained. Maybe a specialized program or advanced classes in subjects you enjoy. We can't afford special programs, Lily said automatically, the phrase clearly a familiar refrain in her household. That's not an issue, Max assured her. If you qualify, and I strongly suspect you will, there are scholarships and grants available. Lily considered this, her practical nature evident in the thoughtful furrow of her brow. Would it help me become a doctor someday? It absolutely could, Max confirmed. Then okay, she decided, but I need to ask my mum first. Of course, Max agreed, impressed by her mature approach. We'll discuss it during tomorrow's video call. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Max sat in Sarah's office reviewing the EdReach program data. The initiative had been operating at minimum capacity since her passing, maintained but not expanded as she had planned. The potential was still there, but it needed the passion and direction Sarah had provided. His phone chimed with a message from Frank Winters. School records obtained. You should see these test scores. Kids off the charts, especially science and math. Teacher notes suggest advanced placement was recommended last year, but mother couldn't manage logistics with her work schedule. Max wasn't surprised. He'd recognized Lily's intelligence within minutes of real conversation with her. What troubled him was how easily such potential could be squandered due to circumstance. A working mother without resources, an underfunded school without advanced programs, a system that failed to nurture extraordinary gifts in ordinary surroundings. Mr. Harrison? Mrs. Jenkins's voice broke into his thoughts. She stood at the office doorway in her robe, a cup of tea in hand. It's nearly midnight. Just finishing up some research, he replied. Mrs. Jenkins entered, setting the tea beside him. About Lily? Max nodded. She's remarkable, isn't she? Indeed, the housekeeper agreed. Reminds me a bit of Sarah. That same quiet determination. The observation struck Max with its accuracy. I've been thinking about the EdReach program, he said. About expanding it, the way Sarah wanted, creating genuine pathways for students like Lily. That sounds like something good coming from all this, Mrs. Jenkins approved. And what about Elena? What about her? Mrs. Jenkins gave him a knowing look. I saw your expression during the video call earlier. There's more than gratitude there. Max felt himself flush slightly, surprising himself. She's a remarkable woman. Raising Lily alone, working multiple jobs, never complaining despite her illness. He shook his head. I'm just trying to help. Of course, Mrs. Jenkins replied, her tone carefully neutral. Just as you're just helping with the EdReach program. After she left, Max found himself staring at the photo of Sarah on the desk. This is your doing, isn't it? He murmured. Sending them to us right when we needed them most. The photograph offered no answer. But for the first time, looking at Sarah's image didn't bring only pain. There was something else now. A sense of purpose rekindled. A path forward that honored her memory without being paralyzed by it. Max closed the laptop and stood, stretching tired muscles. Tomorrow would bring the Solaris presentation and a decision that would shape not just his company's future, but potentially the lives of people like Lily and Elena Rodriguez. For the first time in 16 months, he felt fully prepared to face it, not as the hollowed-out shell of himself he'd become, but as the man Sarah had loved and believed in. As he passed Lily's room on the way to his own, he paused at the sound of soft whispering. Concerned, he gently pushed the door open a crack. In the dim light of the moon through the window, he could see Lily sitting up in bed, a small photograph in her hands. Abuela, I'm trying to be brave like you taught me, she whispered to the image. Mom's going to get better, and I'm learning new things every day. I think you would like Ethan and his dad. They're sad too, but they're being kind to us. Max silently withdrew, a lump in his throat. Two broken families, finding something in each other that neither had realized they were missing. Perhaps there was healing to be found for all of them. The Solaris Group presentation was slick, meticulously crafted, and filled with impressive projections that had the Harrison Innovations board members nodding with obvious approval. Philip Mercer, Solaris's silver-haired CEO, concluded his pitch with practiced confidence. $8 billion is a historic valuation for an edtech company, Mercer emphasized, his gaze fixed on Max. Plus the added value of our global distribution network, which would instantly scale Harrison's platforms to international markets. The boardroom remained silent as all eyes turned to Max, who had listened to the entire 90-minute presentation without interruption or visible reaction. And the EdReach division? Max asked finally, his voice level. Mercer's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. As I mentioned, we would commit to maintaining the program for 12 months during the integration period. After that, we would evaluate its performance metrics against our standard ROI thresholds. In other words, you'll shut it down in a year, Max translated. Max, Gregory Powell, the board chairman, interjected, Solaris is being extremely generous here. EdReach has been operating at a loss since inception. It wasn't designed for profit, Max replied evenly. It was designed for impact. And it's had admirable impact, Mercer smoothly inserted himself back into the conversation. But our fiduciary responsibility is to shareholders, not social causes. We're in the business of education, not charity. Max sat forward, resting his elbows on the polished conference table. Mr. Mercer, are you familiar with the water crisis in Flint, Michigan? The non sequitur caught everyone off guard. Mercer blinked in confusion. I'm aware of it, yes, but I fail to see. Did you know that a 10-year-old girl has developed a portable, low-cost water filtration system using recycled materials that can effectively remove lead from contaminated water? Silence descended on the boardroom. Karen Chen, sitting to Max's right, shot him a curious glance. I didn't know that, Mercer admitted cautiously. Neither did I until yesterday, Max continued. He opened the folder in front of him and slid several sheets across the table. These are preliminary test results from our R&D lab. The system was designed by Lily Rodriguez, The girl currently staying with my family, and my son Ethan. They built it for his science fair project. Board members leaned forward to examine the papers, expressions shifting from confusion to interest as they reviewed the data. "This is legitimate?" Powell asked, eyebrows raised. "Completely," Max confirmed. "Our engineers were skeptical at first, understandably so, but the design works. It's not perfect and it needs refinement, but the core concept is sound. A water filtration system that costs less than $5 to produce, using materials available in any community." "That's impressive," Mercer acknowledged, "but I still don't see the relevance to our acquisition offer." Max smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually serious face. "The relevance, Mr. Mercer, is that Lily Rodriguez attends one of the schools in the EdReach program, a school that, according to your proposal, would lose our technology and curriculum support within a year." He stood, moving to the large screen at the front of the room. With a few taps on his tablet, he brought up a new presentation. "Gentlemen and Ms., not an exit strategy, but a growth strategy centered around what we do best, leveraging technology to solve real problems and create educational opportunities." For the next 30 minutes, Max outlined a comprehensive plan that expanded the EdReach program, integrated it more fully with their commercial offerings, and created a new division focused specifically on student innovations like Lily's water filter. "Chen, I'd like to present an alternative vision for Harrison Innovations. We've been sitting on nearly $2 billion in cash reserves since the Pineapple acquisition," Max concluded. "I propose we use a portion of that to fund this expansion, with particular emphasis on communities like Roxbury, where untapped potential is being wasted daily." When he finished, the room remained silent for several long moments. Powell was the first to speak. "This is unexpected, Max. For the past year, you've been focused solely on core business metrics. What's changed?" Max considered the question carefully. "I have," he answered simply. "Or rather, I've remembered what made this company special in the first place. It wasn't just about profits. It was about possibility, about creating tools that open doors for the next generation." He looked directly at Mercer. "Your offer is generous, and I appreciate the interest in what we've built. But Harrison Innovations isn't for sale, not at any price." The aftermath of the meeting left Max energized rather than drained. For the first time since Sarah's passing, he felt fully aligned with the company's mission again. Her mission, which had somehow become intertwined with Lily's future and, by extension, Ethan's. Karen caught up with him as he headed back to his office. "That was quite a show," she remarked, falling into step beside him. "The board is in shock." "Good or bad shock?" "Mixed," she admitted. "Powell and Davidson are concerned about turning down the Solaris offer. The others seemed intrigued by your counter-proposal, especially after seeing those test results." She gave him a sidelong glance. "Were those real, by the way?" "The water filter?" Max laughed. "Completely real. I couldn't believe it myself. The kids were working on it in our kitchen last night. Lily had this idea about using layered sand, activated charcoal, and some kind of enzyme treatment. Ethan was helping her build the housing from recycled plastic containers. When I saw what they were attempting, I asked if they'd let our lab run some tests. And it actually works?" Karen sounded impressed, despite herself. "Better than it has any right to," Max confirmed. "Our engineers think with some refinement it could be a genuine innovation, especially for communities with limited infrastructure." Karen shook her head in amazement. "So a 10-year-old from Roxbury just changed the direction of a multi-billion-dollar company, along with an 8-year-old who finally has his father's attention," Max added quietly. Back at the penthouse that evening, Max found Ethan and Lily hunched over the dining table, surrounded by plastic bottles, tubing, charcoal, and various containers of sand and gravel. Mrs. Jenkins supervised from a safe distance, occasionally intervening when experiments threatened to spill onto the antique wood. "How's the science fair project coming along?" Max asked, setting down his briefcase. Both children looked up, faces alight with the special enthusiasm that came from creative problem-solving. "We fixed the flow rate problem," Ethan announced proudly. "Lily figured out we needed wider tubes at the collection point, and Ethan had the idea to use mesh from the kitchen strainer for the pre-filter," Lily added, a hint of admiration in her voice. "It catches the bigger particles before they can clog the sand layer." "Mrs. Jenkins wasn't too happy about that," Ethan admitted with a guilty glance at the housekeeper. "I've ordered replacements, Mrs." Jenkins said dryly. Scientific progress comes at a cost, apparently. Max laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. I have news that might interest you both. Our engineering team tested your design, and they're very impressed. Lily's eyes widened. Really? But it's just a prototype. A very effective prototype, Max corrected. They think with some refinement, it could be developed into something that could help communities with water contamination issues. Ethan bounced excitedly in his chair. Like real engineers working on our invention? Potentially, Max hedged, not wanting to overpromise. They've invited you both to the lab this weekend to discuss improvements. The children exchanged looks of pure excitement, their different backgrounds momentarily erased by shared passion for their project. What about Mom's video call? Lily asked, practicality reasserting itself. It's scheduled for Saturday morning. We'll work around it, Max assured her. Speaking of which, I visited your mother at the hospital today. Lily immediately tensed. Is she okay? The doctors said. She's responding well to treatment, Max interrupted gently. In fact, they're talking about moving her out of isolation next week, ahead of schedule. Her latest tests show significant improvement. The relief on Lily's face was palpable. Can I see her then? In person? That's the plan, Max confirmed. With proper precautions, of course. After dinner, while the children returned to their project with renewed enthusiasm, Max retreated to his office to catch up on emails. A knock at the door drew his attention. Mr. Harrison? Mrs. Jenkins entered with a cup of coffee. There's something I think you should see. She handed him a crumpled permission slip she'd found in Lily's backpack while sorting laundry. It was for a field trip to the Boston Museum of Science, the very place where Sarah had first conceived the Ed Reach program. The form was filled out but unsigned, with a note from Lily's teacher indicating it was the second reminder. The field trip is tomorrow, Mrs. Jenkins pointed out. I believe she hasn't mentioned it because of the $20 fee. Max felt a pang at the thought of Lily silently excluding herself from an opportunity over such a small amount, small to him, but perhaps insurmountable to a child used to scarcity. I'll speak with her, he promised. He found Lily in the guest room later that evening, carefully organizing her school materials for the next day. She'd adapted to the Harrison household routines with remarkable efficiency, her innate self-sufficiency evident in how she managed her belongings and schedule. Lily, Max began, sitting on the edge of the bed, Mrs. Jenkins found this in your backpack. He held up the permission slip. Why didn't you mention the field trip? Lily's expression closed off, her chin lifting slightly in that now familiar gesture of pride. I didn't want to ask for more things. You're already doing so much for us. It's just $20, Max said gently. That's almost 4 hours of work for my mom at the convenience store, Lily replied matter-of-factly. We have to be careful with money. The statement, delivered without self-pity but as simple reality, hit Max harder than any boardroom negotiation. This child calculated the world in terms of her mother's hourly wage, understanding economics in the most personal way possible. I understand, Max said carefully, but while you're staying with us, these kinds of opportunities are part of what we want to provide, not as charity, but as investment in your future. Lily considered this, her practical nature weighing his words. My teacher says it's an important trip. We'll see real scientists working in laboratories. Then you should definitely go, Max encouraged. In fact, I have an idea. The museum's director is an old friend of mine. What if I arrange for a special tour for both you and Ethan? His class isn't scheduled to visit until spring, but I'm sure his teacher would approve an educational day. The suggestion broke through Lily's reserve, excitement flickering across her face before she controlled it. That would be pretty cool. Ethan told me they have a lightning demonstration that creates actual plasma. They do, Max confirmed, smiling at her enthusiasm. It was always Sarah's, Ethan's mum's, favorite exhibit. Ethan told me about her, Lily said softly. He said she was really smart and nice and that she started a program to help kids like me. The simple statement caught Max off guard. Yes, she did. The Ed Reach program. My school got new computers last year because of that program, Lily revealed. My teacher said they were donated by Harrison Innovations. The connection was another piece falling into place in what increasingly felt like Sarah's master plan. Max cleared his throat, unexpectedly emotional. Then I'm especially glad they're being used by students like you, he managed. The next day brought another development. As promised, Max had arranged for both children to attend the Museum of Science field trip, with Mrs. Jenkins accompanying them since he had meetings he couldn't reschedule. When they returned that afternoon, Mrs. Jenkins immediately sought him out in his home office, her expression concerned. "There was an incident at the museum," she began without preamble. Max's heart rate immediately accelerated. "Is everyone okay?" "Physically, yes," Mrs. Jenkins assured him. But during the tour, the guide asked a question about DNA replication that apparently was meant for the high school group scheduled later. Lily answered it correctly with detail that surprised everyone. "That doesn't sound like a problem," Max said, confused. It wasn't until her teacher pulled her aside and accused her of showing off inappropriately. Mrs. Jenkins's disapproval was evident. She suggested, rather unkindly, that Lily was making up answers to get attention. Max felt a surge of protective anger. What happened then? The museum guide, a doctoral student from MIT, intervened. He confirmed Lily's answer was not only correct, but showed advanced understanding. He spent quite some time talking with her afterward. "And Lily? How did she take it?" Mrs. Jenkins sighed. "She's upset, naturally, though trying not to show it. She's in her room now reading that medical textbook she brought from home. Ethan tried to cheer her up, but she said she wanted to be alone." After thanking Mrs. Jenkins, Max headed to Lily's room, knocking softly before entering. He found her cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by notebooks filled with her neat handwriting, diagrams, formulas, and scientific terminology far beyond elementary level. "Mrs. Jenkins told me what happened," he said, sitting at the desk chair. "I'm sorry your teacher reacted that way." Lily shrugged, though her reddened eyes betrayed her casual posture. "It's okay. She thinks I'm weird anyway." "You're not weird," Max stated firmly. "You're exceptional. There's a difference." "Being exceptional isn't always good," Lily replied, wisdom beyond her years in her voice. "It makes other people uncomfortable." "Sometimes," Max acknowledged, "but it also opens doors that would otherwise remain closed." He hesitated, then decided to share his idea. "Lily, would you be willing to take some specialized tests? Not regular school tests, but assessments designed to measure cognitive abilities and specific aptitudes." Lily looked up, wariness mingling with curiosity. "What kind of tests?" "The kind that could help us create an educational plan tailored specifically to your abilities," Max explained. "I have gifts that aren't being nurtured in a standard classroom. My mom can't afford special schools," Lily said automatically. "Let's find out what would be best for you first," Max suggested. "Then we can worry about logistics." After a moment's consideration, Lily nodded. "Okay, but I need to talk to my mom about it first." "Of course," Max agreed. "We'll discuss it during tomorrow's call." That evening, Max received a call from the hospital. Dr. Patel's news was encouraging. Elena's response to treatment had exceeded expectations, and they were now projecting she could be released in as little as 10 days, significantly earlier than the original estimate. "Her determination is remarkable," the doctor commented. "She's focused entirely on getting back to her daughter." "She's a remarkable woman," Max agreed, thinking of Elena's quiet strength and dignity despite her circumstances. After ending the call, Max found himself thinking about Elena more than he'd expected. Their brief conversations during hospital visits and video calls had revealed a woman of intelligence, resilience, and surprising humor despite her situation. There was something about her that reminded him of Sarah, not in appearance or personality, but in that core of inner certainty, of knowing exactly who she was and what mattered to her. The realization startled him. For 16 months, he'd held Sarah's memory like a shield against any new emotional connections, yet somehow, without intention or expectation, he found himself genuinely caring about what happened to Elena and Lily beyond the repayment of a debt. The following Saturday brought the promised visit to Harrison Innovations R&D labs. Both children were nearly vibrating with excitement as Max led them through security and into the gleaming research facility. Ethan, despite having visited before, was just as thrilled as Lily, whose wide eyes took in every detail of the sophisticated equipment. Dr. Abernathy, the head of research, greeted them with genuine enthusiasm. "So these are our young innovators. I've been looking forward to meeting you both." For the next 2 hours, the children were given a comprehensive tour, culminating in a testing session for their water filter design. Engineers and scientists treated their questions with respect, explaining concepts clearly without condescension and taking their suggestions seriously. "The activated charcoal binding mechanism is particularly innovative," Dr. Abernathy told Max, as they watched Lily and Ethan collaborating with one of the junior engineers on a design modification. "It's elegantly simple, which often indicates true brilliance in design thinking. They came up with it together, Max said proudly. Ethan remembered something from a nature documentary about how certain plants filter toxins, and Lily figured out how to replicate the process artificially. Dr. Abernathy nodded appreciatively. Speaking of Lily, I've rarely seen such intuitive understanding of scientific principles in someone so young. Has she had her cognitive abilities formally assessed? That's the next step, Max confirmed. Her current school environment isn't equipped to challenge her appropriately. I'd be happy to provide recommendations, the scientist offered. My wife works with the Davidson Institute for Talent Development. They specialize in profoundly gifted children. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Abernathy presented both children with official Harrison Innovations lab coats, complete with their names embroidered on the pockets. The gesture nearly brought Lily to tears, though she maintained her composure with visible effort. "Can we really take these home?" she asked, clutching the small white coat as if it might be snatched away. "Absolutely," Dr. Abernathy assured her. "You've earned them, and we've entered your filter design into our development pipeline for further testing and refinement." "What does that mean?" Ethan asked, already proudly wearing his coat despite it hanging past his knees. "It means," Max explained, "that professional engineers will work to make your invention even better, with the goal of potentially using it to help communities with water quality issues." The children exchanged looks of astonished pride, their different backgrounds momentarily irrelevant in the face of shared achievement. On the drive home, Max's phone rang. Karen Chen's name flashed on the car's display. "Max," she said without preamble when he answered, "Solaris just upped their offer to $10 billion, with a guaranteed 2-year continuation of EdReach." In the rearview mirror, Max caught sight of Lily and Ethan in the back seat, heads bent together over a diagram they were sketching, completely absorbed in their shared creativity. Two children from vastly different circumstances, finding common ground in curiosity and innovation. "Tell them no," Max replied calmly. "Harrison Innovations isn't for sale, not at any price." As he ended the call, Max felt a certainty he hadn't experienced since Sarah's passing. Some things were worth more than money, more than business success, more than avoiding emotional risk. Some things were simply priceless. The gymnasium of Roxbury's Lincoln Elementary School buzzed with excitement as families and students filled the rows of folding chairs. Colorful science fair projects lined the perimeter, each representing weeks of student work. But the crowd's attention focused on the central display, where Ethan Harrison and Lily Rodriguez stood beside their water filtration system. Max sat in the front row alongside Mrs. Jenkins, both beaming with pride as the school principal approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special announcement today," Principal Watkins began. "For the first time in Lincoln Elementary's history, one of our projects has been selected as a national finalist in the Young Innovators Challenge." Applause erupted through the gymnasium. Max watched Lily's face transform with genuine surprise and joy. They had kept the news secret until this moment. Beside her, Ethan bounced on his toes, unable to contain his excitement. "The Harrison Rodriguez water purification system," Principal Watkins continued, "has been recognized not only for its scientific merit, but for its potential real-world application in communities facing water contamination issues. Please join me in congratulating our young scientists." As the applause swelled again, Max found himself unexpectedly emotional. Just 3 weeks had passed since the day at Aquaventure Park, yet the transformation in both children was remarkable. Ethan had blossomed with newfound confidence, while Lily's natural brilliance had found an outlet and recognition that her circumstances had previously denied her. The empty chair beside Max served as a reminder of the one person missing from this celebration. Elena Rodriguez was scheduled for release from the hospital tomorrow, her treatment having progressed even more rapidly than doctors had anticipated. She had insisted that they not delay the science fair for her sake, promising to watch the video Max would record. After the ceremony, as parents and teachers mingled over punch and cookies, Max found himself approached by Lily's teacher, the same woman who had embarrassed her at the museum. "Mr. Harrison," she began hesitantly, "I owe you, and especially Lily, an apology. I misjudged her abilities and intentions." "It's a common mistake," Max replied diplomatically. "Exceptional children are often misunderstood." The teacher nodded, genuine regret in her expression. "The assessment results the school received were, well, they're unlike anything I've seen in 20 years of teaching. We're simply not equipped to provide the level of education Lily requires. This wasn't news to Max. The comprehensive evaluations he had arranged had confirmed what he'd already suspected. Lily's cognitive abilities placed her in the profoundly gifted category, with particular strengths in scientific reasoning and mathematical concepts. She was effectively functioning at a high school level in several subjects while still only 10 years old. "We're working on a solution," Max assured the teacher. "A tailored educational plan that will challenge her appropriately, while still allowing her to develop socially with peers." Later that evening, back at the penthouse, the children's excitement had yet to diminish. They sat at the dining table, surrounded by congratulatory flowers and the special cake Mrs. Jenkins had prepared, animatedly discussing the national competition scheduled for Washington, D.C. in 2 months. "Do you think they'll have real scientists there?" Ethan asked, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. "Of course they will," Lily replied, with the confidence of someone who had thoroughly researched the topic. "Last year's panel had 2 Nobel Prize winners and the head of environmental engineering from MIT. "Cool." Ethan's eyes widened. "Do you think they'll like our project?" "They already like it," Lily reminded him. "That's why we're finalists." Max watched their interaction with quiet satisfaction. The initially cautious friendship between the children had deepened into something that resembled siblings, complete with occasional bickering, fierce loyalty, and the development of private jokes and shared references. "Dad?" Ethan's voice pulled Max from his thoughts. "When Ms. Rodriguez comes home tomorrow, can she stay for dinner? I want to show her my new telescope." The innocent question highlighted the looming transition. With Elena's release from the hospital, the temporary arrangement that had brought Lily into their home would technically end. The thought created an unexpected heaviness in Max's chest. "I'm sure she'd like that," Max replied carefully. "But remember, she'll still be recovering. We need to make sure she's comfortable and not overwhelmed." "My mom is strong," Lily stated with absolute certainty. "And she's really excited to meet you properly, Ethan. She says you sound like a great science partner from our video calls." The reminder of the daily video conversations between Elena and her daughter brought a smile to Max's face. He had deliberately given Lily privacy for these calls, but occasionally caught glimpses of Elena's warm smile and heard her gentle encouragement as Lily excitedly shared news of her day. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, a perfect October day in Boston. Max had arranged for a private medical transport to bring Elena from the hospital directly to her apartment, where he, Mrs. Jenkins, and the children would meet her with a small welcome home celebration. The apartment itself had undergone a transformation, professionally cleaned, repainted, and subtly updated with new furnishings and a stocked refrigerator, all arranged while respecting Elena's pride and independence. As they parked outside the apartment building, Max noticed Lily growing increasingly quiet, her usual composure giving way to nervous anticipation. "Are you excited to see your mum?" he asked gently as they climbed the stairs. Lily nodded, clutching a handmade card. "I'm just worried she'll look different. The last time I saw her in person, she was really sick." "She's much better now," Max assured her, "and she's still your mum, no matter what." The medical transport arrived shortly after they had finished setting up the modest welcome party. Max felt his own unexpected nervousness as footsteps approached the door, followed by the sound of a key turning in the lock. Elena Rodriguez stepped into the apartment, thinner than before her hospitalization, but with healthy color in her cheeks and clear, bright eyes. She wore simple jeans and a sweater provided by the hospital social worker, her dark hair freshly washed and falling in waves around her shoulders. "Mom!" Lily launched herself forward, and Elena caught her daughter in a fierce embrace, tears streaming down both their faces. "Mi amor," Elena murmured into Lily's hair, holding her as if she might disappear. "I've missed you so much." For several minutes, mother and daughter remained locked in their reunion, speaking rapid Spanish too quiet for others to hear. Max, Mrs. Jenkins, and Ethan stood back, giving them privacy while witnessing the powerful bond between them. When they finally separated, Eleanor wiped her eyes and turned to face the others. "Thank you," she said simply, her gaze meeting Max's with an intensity that made his heart skip. "For everything." "It was our privilege," Max replied, surprised by the emotion threatening to choke his voice. "Your daughter has changed our lives in ways I can't begin to explain." Elena smiled, then turned her attention to Ethan, who stood shyly beside Mrs. Jenkins. "And you must be Ethan, the scientist. Lily has told me so much about you." "Hi, Miss Rodriguez," Ethan replied, stepping forward with the careful formality of a child trying to make a good impression. "I'm glad you're feeling better. Lily really missed you." "I missed her too," Elena replied warmly. "And I want to thank you for being such a good friend to her." Ethan beamed at the acknowledgement. "We're partners now. Our water filter is going to Washington." The next hour passed in a blur of conversation, laughter and shared food, as Elena was brought up to speed on the science fair success and the upcoming national competition. Though clearly still recovering, her energy and warmth filled the small apartment, creating an atmosphere of celebration that belied the humble surroundings. Max found himself watching her more than he intended, struck by her grace and resilience. There was something magnetic about the way she listened intently to each person, making them feel valued and heard. Even Mrs. Jenkins, who was normally reserved with strangers, was soon sharing family recipes and gardening tips. As the gathering continued, Max stepped onto the small balcony for a moment of fresh air. The view was nothing like his penthouse, just the brick wall of the adjacent building and a narrow slice of sky. But the sounds of laughter from inside filled him with contentment he hadn't experienced in years. "May I join you?" Elena's voice came from behind him. Max turned, nodding with a smile. "Of course." She stepped out, wrapping a light cardigan around her shoulders against the autumn breeze. For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, watching a pair of sparrows flit between fire escapes across the alley. "Your apartment looks different," Elena finally said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Max felt a flush of embarrassment. "I hope we didn't overstep. Mrs. Jenkins thought it might make your recovery easier if things were comfortable." "It's very generous," Elena replied, no accusation in her tone, though a bit disorienting to come home to new furniture and a fully stocked kitchen. "Consider it payment for all the cooking lessons Lily has given Mrs. Jenkins," Max offered lightly. "The empanadas have become a weekly tradition." Eleanor laughed softly, the sound causing an unexpected warmth in Max's chest. "She called me at the hospital to ask about spice proportions. Your housekeeper is a very determined woman." "That she is," Max agreed. After a pause, he added more seriously, "Eleanor, I want you to know that Lily's stay with us has been transformative. For Ethan, certainly, but even more so for me." Eleanor studied him, her dark eyes perceptive. "Lily says you've changed since the day at the water park. She says you smile more now." "I do," Max acknowledged. "For a long time after Sarah died, I was just going through the motions, even with Ethan." "Grief does that," Eleanor said softly. "It empties you out until you can't recognize yourself anymore." The simple understanding in her words touched something deep in Max. "Your mother," he remembered. "Lily mentioned you lost her last year." Eleanor nodded, her gaze turning to the slice of sky visible between buildings. "She was my anchor, especially after Lily's father left. When she got sick, everything fell apart so quickly. I was working 3 jobs, trying to care for her and Lily, and then—" She trailed off, the pain still evident. "I'm sorry," Max said, meaning it deeply. "Life continues," Elena replied with quiet dignity. "We adapt. We find new strength." She turned to face him fully. "Which brings me to something I need to say. The medical care, Lily's assessments, the apartment, it's all incredibly generous. But I need to know what happens now." The directness of the question was pure Eleanor. No games, no manipulation, just honest communication. "What would you like to happen?" Max asked, genuinely curious. Eleanor considered the question seriously. "I need to get back on my feet, find work, rebuild our routine. Lily needs stability, especially with these new educational opportunities opening up for her." "I have a proposal," Max said carefully. "The EdReach program my wife started. It needs leadership from someone who truly understands the communities it serves, someone with first-hand experience of the challenges facing families like yours." Elena's eyebrows rose. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a career," Max clarified. "A position as Community Outreach Director for EdReach, with salary and benefits appropriate to an executive role. You'd help shape the program's direction, identify needs, and serve as liaison between Harrison Innovations and the communities we aim to support." Eleanor stared at him, clearly caught off guard. "Mr. Harrison?" "Max," he corrected gently. "Max," she amended, "I have no corporate experience. No degree in education or technology." "You have something more valuable," Max insisted. "Lived experience and genuine understanding of what these communities need. Plus, From what Lily has told me about your work history, extraordinary organizational skills and adaptability, Elena still looked skeptical. Is this real, or is it another form of charity? It's an opportunity, Max replied honestly, one that benefits us both. The program needs someone like you, and you need meaningful work that allows you to support Lily's development. But, he added, if you're not interested, I understand completely. No strings attached to anything we've done so far. Elena studied him intently, as if searching for hidden motives. Whatever she saw in his expression must have satisfied her, because her shoulders relaxed slightly. I would need to think about it, she said finally. Consider what's best for Lily. Of course, Max agreed. Take all the time you need. Inside the apartment, they could hear Lily and Ethan laughing about something, their voices blending in the easy harmony of friendship. They've become quite a team, Elena observed with a smile. They have, Max agreed, which leads to my other proposal. Elena raised an eyebrow, waiting. The national competition is in 2 months, Max explained. They'll need to continue working together to refine their project, and the educational assessments suggest Lily would benefit from a more challenging curriculum than her current school can provide. I'm aware, Elena said, a hint of maternal concern crossing her features. But private schools are... There's a program at Brookline Academy, Max interrupted gently. For exceptionally gifted students, they offer full scholarships based on merit, not financial need. Lily would qualify easily. Brookline, Elena repeated, recognition in her voice. That's where Ethan goes. Max nodded. It would allow them to continue their collaboration and give Lily the academic challenges she needs. It's across the city from our apartment, Elena pointed out practically. The commute would be nearly impossible with my work schedule, even if I took the position you're offering. This was the most delicate part of Max's proposal. He chose his words carefully. There's a building near the school. Harrison Innovations owns it as part of our corporate housing program. There's a 3-bedroom apartment available that would be included as part of your compensation package, should you accept the position. Elena's eyes widened as she realized the implications. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've tried to consider the practical realities, Max admitted, but these are just options, Elena. You're free to choose what works best for you and Lily. For a long moment, Elena was silent, processing the possibilities being presented. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but firm. Why are you doing all this? The truth, please. Max took a deep breath, recognizing the importance of complete honesty in this moment. It started as gratitude, he began. Lily saved Ethan's life. That creates a bond that's hard to explain, but it's become something more. He paused, searching for the right words. Your daughter reminded me what it means to be fully alive, to care deeply about something beyond just surviving each day. Watching her and Ethan together showed me what I'd been denying him and myself since Sarah died. Eleanor's expression softened at his vulnerability. And you? Max continued, surprising himself with his directness. In our conversations, brief as they've been, I've found myself drawn to your strength, your dignity, your clear-eyed way of facing challenges. I'm not presuming anything romantic, he added hastily. I respect you too much for that, but I value the connection we're forming, whatever shape it takes. Eleanor didn't respond immediately, her gaze turning back to the narrow view of sky. Just as the silence was becoming uncomfortable, she spoke. After my mother passed, I promised myself I would never depend on anyone again, that Lily and I would make our own way no matter how difficult. She turned to face him. But I'm learning that independence doesn't have to mean isolation, that accepting help isn't the same as surrendering control. No, it isn't, Max agreed softly. I'll consider your offers, Eleanor decided. All of them. But I need time, and I need to know that whatever I decide about the job or the housing doesn't affect Lily's educational opportunities. Absolutely, Max assured her. Those are separate matters entirely. Their conversation was interrupted by Ethan's voice calling from inside. Dad, Ms. Rodriguez, come see what we built. They returned to find the children had constructed an elaborate model of what they declared was the next generation of their water filter. This one incorporating solar power for communities without reliable electricity. As the afternoon progressed into evening, Max observed the natural ease developing between all of them. Ethan showing Elena his favorite books, Lily helping Mrs. Jenkins prepare dinner, the conversation flowing without awkwardness or forced politeness. It felt in some indefinable way like the foundation of something that could grow into a different kind of family. When it was time to leave, Lily surprised everyone by asking if she could stay the night with her mother. Of course, Max replied immediately, though he felt an unexpected pang at the thought of the quiet penthouse without her presence. All your things are still at our place, though. I have what I need here, Lily said simply, looking around the apartment with obvious contentment at being home. Elena walked them to the door, while Lily began unpacking the small backpack she'd brought. Thank you for today, Elena said softly. For everything, really. We should be thanking you, Max replied. For sharing Lily with us these past weeks. Elena smiled, the expression transforming her face with a luminous quality that caught Max off guard. She's quite something, isn't she? She's extraordinary, Max agreed. Like her mother. A faint blush touched Elena's cheeks. I'll call you tomorrow about the EdReach position. I have some questions and ideas I'd like to discuss. I look forward to it, Max said, meaning it deeply. As they walked toward the car, Ethan's small hand slipped into his. Dad, is Lily coming back to our house? I'm not sure, buddy, Max answered honestly. Her mom just got home, so they need some time together. Ethan considered this with surprising maturity. That makes sense. But we'll still see them, right? For the science competition and stuff? Definitely, Max assured him. And I think we'll be seeing a lot more of them in general. Good, Ethan declared with certainty. Because I think Ms. Rodriguez makes you happy. You smile different when you talk to her. The perceptiveness of the observation stunned Max. I do? Ethan nodded solemnly. Like how you used to smile at Mom in the old videos. Max felt his throat tighten with emotion. He knelt down to his son's level, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders. Ethan, no one will ever replace your mom. You know that, right? I know, Ethan replied with the simple wisdom of childhood. But Mom wouldn't want you to be sad forever. She told me that once when Grandpa had passed. She said being sad is okay, but we have to keep finding new happy things too. Max pulled his son into a tight embrace, marveling at how this child, so neglected in his grief, had somehow retained Sarah's essential wisdom and compassion. 2 months later, on a crisp December morning, Max stood in the crowded ballroom of a Washington, D.C. hotel, watching as Lily and Ethan accepted the first-place trophy at the National Young Innovators Challenge. Their water filtration system, refined with help from Harrison Innovations engineers, but still fundamentally their original design, had captivated the judges with its elegant simplicity and real-world applications. Beside him, Eleanor beamed with maternal pride, her hand unconsciously finding his as the children posed for photographs. In the 8 weeks since her release from the hospital, she had flourished in her new role at EdReach, bringing fresh perspective and authentic community connections that had energized the program beyond expectations. The transition hadn't been without challenges. Eleanor had initially declined the corporate apartment, determined to maintain her independence. Only when a pipe burst in her Roxbury building, rendering it temporarily uninhabitable, did she agree to use the apartment as a short-term solution. 2 weeks had become a month, and then a tacit understanding that the arrangement made sense for everyone, especially with Lily thriving at Brookline Academy. Their personal relationship had developed with similar careful steps. Coffee meetings to discuss EdReach initiatives becoming dinner conversations that extended long after work topics were exhausted. Weekend outings with the children evolving into quiet evenings together after the kids were asleep. Professional respect deepening into genuine emotional connection. They're amazing, Elena said now, watching as a renowned scientist bent to discuss some technical aspect of the filter with the children. I can hardly believe that's my Lily up there, talking to a Nobel laureate about molecular filtration. Believe it, Max replied, squeezing her hand gently. She was always extraordinary. She just needed the right opportunities to shine. We all do, Elena said softly, her gaze meeting his with the warm directness that had become so precious to him. Later that evening, after the children had finally succumbed to exhaustion in their hotel room, supervised by Mrs. Jenkins, who had insisted on accompanying them to the competition, Max and Elena found themselves alone on the hotel's rooftop terrace. The Washington Monument stood illuminated against the night sky, a beacon of aspiration rising above the city. I have something for you, Max said, reaching into his jacket pocket. A small celebration of your first 2 months at Harrison Innovations. He handed her a velvet box, which Eleanor accepted with a raised eyebrow. This doesn't look like a standard corporate anniversary gift. Open it, Max encouraged. Inside was a delicate silver pendant, a perfect miniature of the water filter design that had brought their families together, rendered in precious metal with subtle details that captured the essence of the children's invention. "Max," Elena breathed, lifting it carefully from the box. "It's beautiful. Turn it over," he suggested. Engraved on the back were the words, "From one life saved, many changed." Elena's eyes glistened as she read the inscription. "You had this made?" Max nodded. "I worked with a designer from the engineering team. They used the original blueprints Ethan and Lily drew on our kitchen table." "It's perfect," Elena said softly. "Will you help me put it on?" Max took the necklace and carefully fastened it around her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin. When she turned to face him again, the pendant rested just above her heart. "Eleanor," Max began, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't been since his 20s, "these past months have been transformative. For Ethan, for me, for Harrison Innovations. And I believe you feel it too. This connection between us that keeps growing stronger." She nodded, her dark eyes steady on his. "I do. I know it hasn't been long," Max continued, "and we both carry histories and responsibilities that matter deeply to us. But I find myself thinking about the future in ways I couldn't imagine a year ago." "What kind of future are you imagining?" Eleanor asked softly. Max took a deep breath. "One where we continue this journey together, where we see where this relationship can lead, not just as colleagues or friends, but as partners in the fullest sense. I'm not rushing, and I don't expect answers tonight. But I wanted you to know that my heart is open again because of you." Elena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers touching the pendant at her throat. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "After Lily's father left, I built walls around my heart, walls that grew higher and stronger with each hardship." She looked up at him. "I never expected someone like you to come into our lives. I certainly never expected to feel this way again." "And how do you feel?" Max asked, his heart pounding. Eleanor smiled, the expression transforming her face with a radiance that took his breath away. "Like someone who's been given a second chance at happiness, like someone who's ready to be brave enough to take it." She stepped closer, her hand coming up to rest against his cheek. "We'll take it slow. Our children come first, always. But yes, Max, I want to see where this journey leads us to." As Max leaned down to kiss her, gentle and full of promise, he felt the last pieces of his fractured heart knitting together, not erasing the past, but creating space for a new future none of them could have imagined. In a hotel room a few floors below, two children who had saved each other in ways beyond the physical slept peacefully, their trophy standing guard beside their shared dreams. And somewhere, Max liked to think, Sarah was smiling her approval at the healing her absence had ultimately mysteriously inspired. From one life saved, many changed indeed.